Hey Lisa, how you doing?
I'm great, Deb. How are you?
I'm really good. Good to chat. Good to chat with you about all things glide.
Well, you were an early reader. Huh? Well, not only an early reader, my goodness, Deb, I met you when I first began the whole, glide story. You were one of the first people I met when I, joined the coaching. I signed up for my coaching course, and we did that coaching mastery weekend
Uh-huh.
at Artarmon, and we just kind of clicked straight away. So you've been part of this glide story for quite a while.
Oh, thank you. Do you know that weekend was because when I go in when I went into those weekends, I never knew who was going to be there. I used to go in really quite blind, and I'll never forget when I met you on that Friday night, and it was like, oh my God, that's Lisa Forrest. I know who Lisa Forrest is. Oh my goodness. It really took me by surprise, and then I was overwhelmed with delight. And we just, like you said, great connection ever since. It's been wonderful.
Yeah. Well, I was freaking out that night, myself. In fact, later, remember David Marr, who runs Celebrity Speakers here, I sort of, talked to him, sent him a note, and I've been doing the coaching course, I can speak from this angle, when it comes to speaking engagements. He's like, what? Lisa, tell me you ran the course. You didn't take part in the course. Like, yeah, no, I took part. I needed some updated motivation techniques, which, as you know, that was sort of why I, signed up, because the one that I'd been using, which was when the going gets tough, the tough get going, it had really lost its luster, and I'd been using it as a kind of whipping or a whip for years. So I was just turning up to, like, can I save myself? Can I save my marriage? I didn't know that I would have to be coaching people even as as part of the course. And that was fascinating to then actually be sitting with, because, we coach other coaches, and then we start to coach pro bono people. And that was the beginning. I came to this whole glide process looking for trouble with my thinking, or taking time out to find what was wrong with my thinking. And that had been a problem since I was swimming for Australia. And then, of course, you start coaching and you realise that actually quite a lot of us have a trouble with our thinking. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way, I'm sure. But I mean, I talked about the fact that I had this voice, this Miss Never Enough, who just would drive me, into black holes of doubt. And so many of us do.
Absolutely. I was just going to say, welcome to the human race. It's not,
yeah.
We all have that Mrs. Never Enough, or, the monkey chatter, or whatever. We all got a name for it, right? So, and I love how you weave this part of your personality, or your person, in and out of this book. She's such a diva, really, isn't she? This
It's Never Enough, and the Scarcity Sisters. Yeah, there's a few of them in there. I'm not going to make another stupid mistake, and now everyone will think you've gone completely mad. There's a few of them in there, but It's Never Enough is the lead singer. but I think that also, as you say, that capacity to be human. I mean, I've said now a few times when while I've been chatting to people about glide, that when you're 8 and you decide you want to go to the Olympic Games, and you've seen your heroes go, 15 or 16, which is, I was an 8-year-old watching Shane Gould and Bev Whitfield in 72. And so you start to pay attention, right? I had an awareness practice from the time I was 8 years old. So I was pretty aware of stuff, aware of the voice, aware of a whole lot of things. But I thought that the obstacles to being better were actually false, as opposed to, as you say, just being human. And that's what the nicest thing I think that I learned through, first of all, the coaching, and then through the practice of mindfulness meditation and, the whole MBSR program, that, oh, right, it's human to make mistakes. Miss Perfectionist, she's one of the Scarcity Sisters. But I think that was a really, what a relief that is. And that's one of the tenets, isn't it, of self-compassion. Well, talking to yourself like a friend, understanding that you as a human being are not perfect, you will make mistakes, but not taking it personally, or not kind of identifying the mistake. Or the emotion, I'm sure we'll talk about anxiety and stuff, but not identifying, just realising that, oh, we make mistakes, oh, we have these moments when we're panicked, where these thoughts will come and go. We can let them go if they're not going to help us. And that was just, what a revelation.
Yeah, absolutely. You mean we don't have to be perfect all the time?
I know. What a revelation that is. My God.
Thank goodness. There you go. Well, so I want to come back to, because the whole reason we're talking today, I mean, apart from we could talk every day anyway, and we would if we could, let's be honest.
For hours.
But you've written this awesome book, Glide, and it is a brilliant book. And I think one of the things, pretty much what you're talking about right now, or what sort of just that little chat then, was about the subline of this, taking the panic out of modern living. And then the DY Ladies Guide to Life. I love those ladies. I love those ladies. They are just, are they goddesses, do you think?
No, well, I think they probably were in their day, yeah. But I think the reason, and again, that was one of the other things that I discovered, of course, that for years, yes, I had this, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. I love that saying that motto when I learned it when I was a kid. You know, it made this shy little girl kind of tough and like a tigress kind of thing. So I really enjoyed it. But what stopping and, you know, doing the coaching course and then the mindfulness helped me do was realized that actually I knew another way to manage a high stress moment, and the ladies had shown me, and I knew from the very first day I landed at the, you know, down at the club. So DY Beach is in between Collaroy and Curl, if you like. It's on the northern beaches of Sydney. And my brother wanted a fiberglass surfboard, and he was, you know, all of 6 turning 7, and Dad, being an old Bondi lifesaver, said you have to be able to swim 400 metres. So he got his name in the paper after his first race, and I'm the older sister, so I think that was my competitive edge stirred. And I went down the next week, but I was also a really teary kid and a shy kid, and I always cried. I didn't like leaving Dad's side. Anything, even going to kids' birthday parties, I'd cry, you know. Wow. So the moment that I cried on the blocks, because that 25-metre line looked an awful long way away for my head out of the water overarm freestyle, you know, I couldn't even do, you know, what little kids now know is sort of, you know, big arms with a breathing every 3 strokes. Anyway, so the moment I cried, the ladies just had a policy that an older girl jumped in the water right in front of me in the lane, and she gave me a big grin and said, "Come on, sweetheart, you can do this." And so the gun went off and I threw myself in. And they got me. She walked backwards, down the lane as I swam, trying to catch up to her, of course, and she got me to that 25-metre line. Yeah. And there is the beauty, isn't it? There was no judgment. It was just perfectly normal. Little girls cry, they get nervous. Yeah. We take the first fear out of the way by putting someone in the water so you're not going to drown. Yeah. And then we deal with the sort of the sense of self, if you like, you know, and we just get in there and show you that those tears are underestimating you. Yeah. And so to actually go, oh, wow, I've been telling that story for years, just a kind of a quaint story about how we started in the amateur days. And then to realize, as I was doing the coaching course and learning about leadership, that, oh, I had been given a beautiful lesson in leadership when I was 8 years old. I was just learning that I could offer it to myself, that sort of kindness, that non-judgment, because this is never enough, is full of judgment. So to become a DY lady for myself, or to step into my role as the DY lady, that's what I was invited to do, really.
Yeah, I think, you know, you used the word kindness before, and honestly, that's what they were. And you know, it's interesting. You said little girls cry, so little boys cry.
That's true. I should say that. Yeah, of course they do. Yeah.
But it's true. So, but whether we're little or we're fully grown, we cry.
Yeah, I cry still. I shouldn't be saying little.
And I don't need much encouragement sometimes either. But it's, the bottom line is, the thing that I really loved about that DY experience with those ladies is exactly what you said about that whole lack of judgment. They got alongside you. They gave you permission to be who you are, or who you were, and like you say, they led from kindness. They came from kindness, and they helped you go through that lead. That was it. And then this spark of awesomeness was born in your brain around, well, if I can do that distance, I'm going to be an Olympic swimmer. Maybe there might have been a slight bit of time lag between there and the Olympic swimmer, but it was, it was pretty quick. Really.
Not much. It wasn't much. I couldn't wait to come down again the next week. And then we joined late in the season, so the championship season had already begun. So you had to swim 3 club races to swim a championship race, and the first race I could swim was the under 8 25 metres of butterfly. I could barely do freestyle. But I had this book called Swimming the Shane Gould Way that Mum gave me for Christmas, or was in my Santa bag. And I asked Mum later why she'd given me that, because I didn't have an interest in swimming at that point. You know, this was, say, February, and I was given the book for Christmas. But she said every little girl back in 1972 loved Shane Gould. She was 15. She was about to go to the Olympic Games. She was, you know, in line to win 5 individual gold medals. Like, the woman was a super fish while she was a teenager.
Yeah.
And so I covered that book in plastic, and there were lots of photos, of black and white photos of of the different strokes. Her father had written it. And so I taught myself to do butterfly from that book that week before the championship race. And I came second in the race, but only by a whisker, to a girl who, you know, her sisters were in DY80. She'd been a member since she was 5. And so suddenly I was like, I'd done something special that day. And then that winter, those girls went to Munich. I read about them in the newspaper, and I was like, oh, I'm going to have a go at that.
Yeah. So it's really interesting, the fact that you taught yourself to swim from a book. Right, and what better, you know, master can you learn from? Let's be honest.
Yes, so appropriate, isn't it? Later,
totally amazing. But that's not the only thing you've taught yourself. I know we've just been talking about the coaching and the mindfulness and the like, but, and you go into this in your book as well, is that, you know, you took the leap from the pool into other areas of life where you really challenged yourself with goals. That you went to New York, for example. And that was to, yeah, we mentioned, you know, that was acting, was it not? Is that right?
Yeah, to study acting.
So there was lots of different things that you really challenged yourself, and there's been a lot of self-learning, self-taught, self-applying, studying. Can you talk through a little bit of some of that? Like, what motivated all the mastering of various trades, if you will?
You know, I don't know, really. I mean, as I said, like, I was kind of a shy kid, but I think that suddenly my world was opened up. And look, if you have imagined yourself at 8 to be at the Olympic Games, and then you get there, now, you know, the race might not have turned out the way that, you know, you wanted it to, but at the same time, when I retired, I think that I didn't see why, well, if I'd imagined myself doing that, why couldn't I do these other things? And I would really, as a little girl, I mean, I remember having an argument with a friend at school when I was in like year 5. I wasn't a fan of school. I mean, I'm bright enough, I could do it, but I wanted to leave. I said to her, I'm not going to year 12, I'm going to year 10, I'm going to be a secretary, and I'm going to work in London because I like fashion. So that was really the sum of my ambition. And then suddenly I'm captain of an Olympic team, and journalists are saying, what do you want to do after swimming? I want to be a secretary. And there's nothing wrong with being a secretary, but it's not lofty, is it? It's sort of, it was kind of cool. And so
there's still time. You could still be a secretary, right?
Well, I think, oh God, I feel sorry for anyone that would have me as a secretary. I'm so bad at organising myself, let alone anyone else. But that was it. So suddenly I was being asked, what are you going to do? And that is the nature of the amateur days. There was no way that we could turn sport into a career unless you wanted to be a coach. And my mother was never going to let me be a coach, let me tell you. She intended that her girls would go to finish high school, because she didn't, and go to university. So that was in there. So first of all, someone told me I'd be good at PR. And so I'd answer journalists and say, oh, I might do PR. And they say, oh, you'd be good at that. So I'm okay. And then I was always writing. aerograms home, and I loved Manly. And so I had these journalists that were male. They never sort of said, well, you're a woman, so you can't be a sports journalist. They just said, you should be a sports journalist. So that's where I started. But also I had all these other interests, and I think that was the frustration in those early years. Like I chucked all my medals and everything out in a council cleanup in those very early years of retirement, because I wanted to move on. You know, everyone said you go to the Olympics when you're in year 11 and you get on with life, right? And so
are they still missing though? Have any of those medals come back to you?
Well, see, my father found them and brought them back in and hid them in the garage. So
I knew that.
And also, even I had a box of letters and things, and my mother did the same. Like when I was writing Boycott, she produced them. I don't know what, they were in a cupboard somewhere at home. So I was ruthless, so ruthless that I was like, that's it, it's over. There's no point, you know, I'm moving on. So I think, and then I got frustrated that people didn't have the same imagination as me. Well, I could see myself doing all these other things. So, and New York itself, well, yes, I got to that point where I think I had done some acting classes at school and, after work, when I was working on the midday show and stuff. And I think in the end, instinctively, it was great in terms of kind of being able to turn toward emotion, because I've never known how to manage my emotions. No one talked about emotions when you swam, so I just kind of believed in, well, I thought they were weakness. We can get into that, but essentially, you just got to tough it out. So they helped me, the acting classes helped me to understand that, in fact, all experiences are valuable, because if you're going to play a character, it's, the wider your personal experience, the more you can bring to a character. I mean, not to say you can't imagine Hitler, but it's kind of nice to know, that, or be able to embrace all those sides of yourself, like maybe your drivenness or whatever it is. That I just used Hitler as an example, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there was the other great moment in New York when I found my Matisse swimming pool, and that helped me get back to the water. So, look, I just think it's imagination, Deb. Like I imagined myself doing other things. And I mean, I had a dad also who said, don't be a gunner. He just used to say, gonna do this. People would say, gonna do this, gonna do that, never do anything. So if you said you were going to do something, you'd better do it.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a combination of things, really.
Yeah. But I love, the thing that really comes through as I was reading Glide, when you sort of talk about the different applications of your life, is like everything was kind of different, but it wasn't. It was always this blend, everything kind of like there's a tapestry that weaves everything. Does that make sense? I think it's all really...
The writing of the book, or just in my life?
No. Even like the way you talk about it in the book, but it's all like it all interconnects really, really well. Like I think even like the tenacity, the tenacity in your swimming from that. And I don't even know that it's necessarily a competitive edge and drive, even though there is that there. But I think that's what set you up in New York, for example. You were not going to come back without, you followed through with everything. And like you said with your dad, with the whole gonna this and gonna that. No, you do it. You're not a gonna, right? You always followed through. I loved the, on the midday show you experienced there, and how, in fact, I love the way you write about that, when you felt kind of naive and whatever else. But then it was like, no, not really. Here I am. I'm going to learn, and doing the sports stuff as well. You just learn from everything.
Yeah. I think, and I mean, I often think that starting in an amateur sport, we did it for the love, because you weren't doing it for anything else. There was nothing to be gained from it, and except in the end, while yes, there's medals and stuff, there is internal. The intrinsic value was the most important thing. And I think that set me up in many ways. I didn't ever, sadly, and I wish that I had it, because I might have made $1 million, but I never set out to make $1 million doing something, or, to do that. I more set out to have life experiences, and I don't know why that was. I don't know. Some people say it's because I was a Piscean. I don't know. You're at the end of the zodiac sign. Who knows? But I think that there was something about that. I had been so lucky in that everything I've done is really been just fascinated to see if I could do it. And that in itself, it gives you, while I was frustrated with myself at the end of Inheritance, which is the book that kind of, where I went down into very deep holes of doubt and decided I needed to do something about my thinking, it didn't take much for me to actually be able to see, because I knew it was there, that in fact, I'm really lucky. And I think that I have that sense of satisfaction with what I've achieved. Oh, there's a learning, actually. There's the classic thing that I learned from, one of the things I learned from writing the book, actually from mindfulness really, is that there's a mindfulness teacher, my teen bachelor, and she talks about, in terms of the second foundation of mindfulness, the Buddha found that we have feeling tones. We move towards what's pleasant and we move away from what's unpleasant. So there's pleasant. If she says, say pleasant is 10 and unpleasant is -10, neutral is about 0. We pay no attention to neutral. And I think that for me, what I began to understand was that I felt, she said, that's what she did, that contentment is neutral. satisfaction is a neutral feeling. And so, yeah, it doesn't have the jazz of pursuing something that might give us a reward, nor the feeling of avoiding. It's just neutral. So understanding that actually it's okay to rest in that neutral place. And that sense of satisfaction is deep, but it's still. I think that's the beauty of what mindfulness practice gave me, really, in the end, that I had all these experiences. I'd done them for love or because they really interested me. And that was the richness of it. And to just be able to rest in that was the skill, I think, that I had to learn.
Perfect. I'm going to come back to that in a second, but I want to go back to the Olympics just for a moment, because, you know, we're in Olympic year now, and it looks like
a postponed Olympic year.
Yeah. So, you know, we're meant to have the Olympics in Tokyo in a few months' time. Because of the whole COVIDness at the moment, that's not going to happen. It looks like it might happen next year, which is first time in history as far as Olympics have not happened previously as a result of world wars, but they've never been delayed. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, given your Olympic experiences, disappointments of, you know, boycotts and so on, I mean, what would you say from your own experience and your own awareness of Olympics happening and not happening, those agendas being taken out of your control? What would you say to the Olympians of today? Or have you been saying to the Olympians of today?
Really, just when I've been asked about it, I sort of said, I mean, they don't need my advice. They've got plenty of advisors these days. But that a decision was made was the best thing. And I think that the Australians came in early saying, look, we can't mount a team at the moment. For us, it was back then, it was the not knowing was really, really difficult. So we kept training. You know, the Olympic Federation eventually made a decision on May the 23rd, and then the government still challenged that. So it was still going on. There was another meeting with the government into June. So it was that not knowing that made things very difficult. Whereas at least knowing it's postponed. It didn't drag on any further than it needed to. And I think that's the beauty. So then you can go, okay, for some people, it would have been just so devastating. Well, no, I should say for everybody, if you've, you know, trained to go to the Olympics. But there would be people that were more prepared, if you like, than others. So the thing is that you can then have the space to, you know, grieve or feel disappointed, you know, take time out, you know, take a deep breath and then regather yourself and head for 2021. So I think anytime that a decision, you know, one of the big challenges we're talking about with COVID-19 is the uncertainty. So anytime you can make something a bit more certain, then that's very helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
While understanding, of course, that we just don't know anyway, because still, even giving that certainty, we don't know what's going to happen with this over the next year anyway.
Yeah, well, exactly. We make the assumptions it's going to be next year will be fine, and maybe it will.
Yeah.
And it will. Let's just say it will. Let's just speak it into being, shall we?
Yeah.
All right. So let's come back to. I love what you were saying a moment ago about that. You know, between the extreme and that lovely, you know, place of contentment. But because it's interesting, we were talking about this before we were starting to record that piece around. Taking the panic out of modern day living. And I think it was David that said, do you want to?
Yes. That was a question put to me by a journalist, And I think that one of the advantages, because it is a confronting thing, like suddenly in this time of COVID-19, here's this person saying, oh, you can take the panic out of modern living. And it's a, you know, a very, very intense time. And all I can say is, yes, I knew through all of the experiences that I had, whether it was in swimming or whether it was interviewing somebody or writing a book, there had been moments when I had been incredibly, or I'd wound myself up, like in the ready room before the Olympic final, which you can read about in the book. And I knew it was my thinking that was winding me up. And that, of course, then led to me slipping at the start of that race. So, and then even before the Commonwealth Games in '82, I knew it was my thinking, and luckily Rocky had changed my thinking before those games and had helped me to steady myself, and then I could manage. Yeah. So likewise, when I'm interviewing somebody I care about, I get really nervous, you know, I want them to like me. So what I was looking for was in between these there's moments of panic under stress, and there were moments when I'd been totally calm and swum at my best under high stress. So how to make it permanent? That's what I wanted to know. It was clearly possible, but it was more like a fluke if I managed it. So I wanted to turn that sort of state that seemed like a fluke into more of a trait, or at least understand how I could do it more consistently. And really, I mean, whether it comes to training, coaching as we do, or mindfulness practice, it is training the brain to be in that calm calm but ready state, if you like, no matter what it happens to be. And flow itself, if you talk about that really special state of when everything comes together and time seems to fall away and you are at your absolute best, that is when concentration meets challenge, when skill meets challenge, usually at a high level. So the capacity for us to be in flow, that's what I was interested in. I'd had the experience of the flow state. I didn't know how it happened, but I wanted to find out how it happened more often. And really what it comes down to is training the brain.
Yeah, perfect. It's interesting because, as a spectator, just thinking about an Olympic moment, Nadia Comaneci, when she's Comaneci?
Yeah, I'm not, I think it's just Comaneci, but yeah, I'm not an expert in her pronunciation, but
fabulous. Thank you. Yeah. But so, she's celebrated for the perfect 10 in that floor routine, right? But in her mind, as you well know, it was probably a -10. Like she's fixated on all the things that she didn't do and that she missed and so on and so forth. I didn't see that. I just saw the 10 and celebrated and so on, right? And even today, that routine still haunts her in so many ways, right? So I only saw something quite recently about how she spoke again, but it sits in her mind. And one of the things that I was fascinated within Glide was the story of the slip. You mentioned the slip in the pool when you were preparing for the backstroke, I think. So can you tell us a little bit about that? But more importantly, how this slip has been a gift.
Yeah.
But just fun giving.
Who would have thought? But yes, at the moment it wasn't a gift at all. I'm sitting in the ready room in front of 3 East Germans, and suddenly the thought comes into my head, loud as, clear as a bell. I don't know how to do this. And I just was kind of devastated, betrayed. I couldn't understand why it was happening. Back then, there was no sports psychology except, positive thinking is better than negative. So what did it mean about me that I was having this negative thought at this moment? So I fought the thought in my mind. Yes, you do. No, you don't. Yes, you do. And I got myself into a terrible mess. And at a certain point, I put my head in my hands and just said, why are you doing this to yourself now? You're exactly where you want to be. This is where you wanted to be since you were 8 years old. And into my mind flashed a bit like a black and white television, watching Shane Gould, as I was watching the news. She walked out on deck, the pool deck, and she had, I knew it was yellow just because I'd seen the yellow rose. It was, light coloured robe, Australia emblem, waved to the crowd. She lifted both her arms. Yeah. And in that moment, it was such a relief. So I sat up and I said to myself, okay, to the voice, this is what we're going to do. We're going to pretend. We're going to walk out there and we are going to pretend like we know. You're going to get to the 50-metre end where the Australians are in. You're going to lift your arms and wave to the boys because they're like my big brothers, some of them the team. Then you're going to get down halfway down or 3/4 of the way down the pool. And there was my coach's best friend, John Devitt. He was commentating with Gary Wilkinson. You're going to wave to him. Yeah. And at some point, it's going to kick in. You're going to remember how to swim a 200 backstroke. You wouldn't be in the final at the Olympic Games if you didn't. And so I did that. And I was kind of okay until I got into the water. And there I was lane 3, third fastest qualifier. And there were these 2 white patches right under the water level where I was about to be, put my feet. And of course, that reminded me of a conversation that I'd had earlier in the day with Mark Tonelli, who'd won a gold medal in the 4x100 medley relay. And he was also a sprint backstroker. And he offered me this can of resin, a sticky stuff. He said, I sprayed it on my feet. I'd stick to the wall because there'd been a lot of problems with the backstrokers had been slipping all through the meet. This was the last night. But in my journal, I'd been writing about confidence, who had it, how I needed more of it, if I was going to win a medal, And it seemed to me that if I said to Mike, yes, I needed your sticky stuff, then I was admitting I wasn't confident and I wasn't prepared to do that. But suddenly I'm looking at these white patches and those thoughts started going, oh my goodness, where are you going to put your feet now? Is it slippery where the white patches are? Oh, stuff. And of course, I put my feet up and then slipped. So then 20 years later, I've worked in the media and everything, and I was asked to write a book as a
result of the slip, what happened next?
As a result of the slip, you mean in the water?
Yeah.
Oh, so I've slipped, right? So not even with enough. So the gun went off. I'd started to slip before the gun went off, and he didn't see it, so he could have called a false start back then. So I slipped down the wall, not even with enough force to get to the bottom of the pool. So just flailing mid-water, I come up and just, there's all sorts of rules, not rules, but guidelines about the way you swim a 200 backstroke. Like, don't go out too fast is the main one. Yeah. And just, settle yourself into your race, get comfortable, and then you start to build. But I just thought, I've made such a terrible mistake. I let the best women in the world, given them 2 body lengths start. I didn't deserve to just get comfortable. I just had to go after them, And then I got to 4th at the 3rd turn, and then I finished 7th. Which my sister would always say, yeah, but what about the girl who finished 8th? She couldn't even meet the girl who slipped. It wasn't funny at the time, but I could see the later.
Anyway, sorry to make you relive that like then, but just so then after the swim.
Exactly. So, and then, I thought that it was pretty bad, and then I called my mum. And Mum and Dad had got up at 3 a.m. to hear Norman May commentate and call the race. And Mum said to me, first thing she said, what happened? Norman May said you weren't concentrating, that you were waving to everybody in the crowd before the race. My marvellous, fake it till you make it sort of plan had been misconstrued. And all I could think was, he's told my father, who got up all those mornings at 4 and to take me training, that his daughter went all the way to the Olympic Games and didn't concentrate. I was just devastated, as you can imagine. And then, Deb, we've spoken about the Coaching Mastery Weekend. Like, I wrote a book called Making the Most of It in the Middle, which, we can talk about. But you showed the Amy Cuddy TED Talk, Fake It Till You Make It, in that Coaching Mastery Weekend. The first thing. And so I've gone to this thing. I'm freaking out. What am I doing here? Oh, my God, I hope I can save my marriage, And suddenly she's talking about faking it till you make it and lifting your arms up as a way of reducing testosterone, reducing cortisol and elevating testosterone. I'm watching it thinking, oh, my God. You did it right all those years ago. And that was amazing to me, that
you were ahead of your time,
Yeah. Isn't that incredible? I couldn't believe it. So I was like, thanks, Amy Cuddy. And really, I was thinking, what have I done by joining up this coaching course? I'm like going mad. And then I went, no, you seem to be in the right place. There's more to learn here, and you're okay. Your instincts have led you to the right place.
Oh, that's awesome.
But as you say, I did write a book called Making the Most of It 20 years later. And by then I'd been to acting school, I'd taken some writing classes and, looking for good plot points. And suddenly, I was asked to write a book. We're leading into the Sydney 2000 Games. The swimming has become professional. And so I thought, well, what about if you made a girl with similar experiences to me, a gold medal at her first Commonwealth Games rather than silver like I got, a world record holder going into the Olympic Games. What if she slips? When she's got this opportunity to set herself up for life. And so I let her go on a slide that I didn't go on, because I'd come back and I caught up. I was a good girl. I finished all my schoolwork and finished in the top 10% in the HSC. And so I wrote this book, and I would get letters in the mail from teenage girls saying whenever I felt bad, I dipped into your book. Wow. And so suddenly I had a way to go and tell my story. I've not done any public speaking for all of that time. And I had this way of telling the story. We put a frame around, we tell a story about our experiences. And that was the worst experience of my life. And 20 years later, if you'd asked me my most secret desire when I was 16, it would be to write a book. And yet I'd used the worst moment of my life, made it a plot point in this book, and turned it into the best. So, all these years later, I call it the slip that keeps on giving, because I'll talk about it and someone will come up to me at the end of that talk and say, thanks, Lise. I've given up on something I really liked. I can see it's just a setback. I'm going to have another go.
Yeah.
And I thought the gold medal story was the one that, would be the most important story to tell, or the best.
Isn't that the truth, though? Isn't that not life? It doesn't matter who you talk to, what it is they've achieved, whether it's the gold medal, the Academy Award, the whatever the recognition piece that they're celebrating, right? That winning moment leaves that beautiful sweet taste in their mouth, but the story is what happened on the way. Is the story. The story that makes it so fantastic, or whatever, will be that slip moment along the way. It'll be that stumble that wasn't in the script. That was, that's
it's the last thing you want to happen. And yet, if you can stay open to the possibilities, then it's amazing. I mean, and I was lucky in the sense that, look, it's slipping in a swimming race. So I came back to school, and all sorts of things had happened. Parents divorced, and one father who committed suicide, and there was all sorts of things going on. So life puts you in perspective. Totally. But it just means, though, I write about it in Glide. There's a beautiful book called The Body Keeps the Score by a man called Bessel van der Kolk, and it's very much about the experiences that we have. They sit in the body, they're kept in the body, and they're held there. And even while writing Glide, I was writing about the fact that, yes, I had this big story. When I went out and talked to teenagers after I wrote Making the Most of It, there was this big overarching story that was great. Yes, I turned the worst moment into the best, and you can frame it, your experiences, in any way you like. But in the middle, as I was writing Glide, I realized that I was telling the story that from the moment that I had slipped, or when I slipped, I came up to that surface. And my thoughts were, I did not deserve to get comfortable in that race. I didn't deserve to settle in. And yet the only way that I was actually going to really properly make up for what I'd done was to settle in. But I thought, because I'd made a mistake, I didn't deserve to be comfortable. Wow. And that was a revelation. As I saw those words on the page, I realized what I'd been telling myself for all of those years. Yeah. And that was in itself, like, sometimes, I don't know if you've had that experience, Deb, when you connect with a core belief, and you actually realize what it is, like, I get it now, goosebumps, and kind of almost a shaking inside as you let go of that, and you turn toward it, and you just like let yourself feel that sadness of that moment, which was, of course, we all deserve to be comfortable, even if we make mistakes. We were renovating our house at the time, and I was having all sorts of problems as we got closer and closer. My husband was trying to build me a house I could be comfortable in, and I was resisting. Yeah. I was like, is that what that's all about? Just like let it go. Amazing what the body keeps.
See, and that highlights that coaching principle around that piece around pain. Pain takes on many forms, right? It'll be the same experience plays over and over and over. It'll have different names, happens in different places, but that core emotion, that core energy, it's unchanged. And that's exactly what you're talking about. But have you rewritten the story now? Do you think you've rewritten the story of you deserve to be comfortable? Yeah. Do you think?
Well, I think so. Definitely. I think just even, I think awareness is even, you're suddenly aware of it, and you go, yeah. And understanding what self-compassion is, that compassion is not a weakness. That capacity to turn towards that and to let yourself feel it is, it's not what we're taught in sport. We're taught, and yet at the same, I was interested in that in terms of learning about emotion, is that actually in a race or under pressure or even in training, we are taught to be with the experience so that we keep our stroke long, and we keep our breath steady and all those things. And we can do exactly the same thing with an emotion. Whereas most of the time we just don't want to feel it. I just want I want to forget that moment. And yet, of course, trying to forget it or try to avoid it, it just acts out, as you say, in other ways. And then you wonder why you're out of control. Yeah. But in fact, it's because there's this little thing inside, this little person that needs to go, oh, it's okay. It was just a mistake on that day. Not the best place to make the mistake, but you were just a little girl trying to deal with big things.
Yeah, and that's it. So you just need to bring that beautiful DY lady into your world. Yeah. Get alongside, jump into the pool, the pain pool, And
Yeah.
you know,
Lead you through. There's another side. There's another side. Yeah.
that's it.
And I say that with full understanding the fact that, again, it was a swimming race, and and there are people who are listening to this podcast who have much greater trauma than that. So I'm not. I don't mean to devalue at all the fact that there are people who've gone through incredibly difficult things, who have survived it, and who are not ready to actually be able to turn towards some of the things that would unlock them and would help. But again, it's John Kabat-Zinn early on. I remember, I think it's in Full Catastrophe Living. He talks about the fact that the body is an infinitely healing organism.
Yeah.
So to be able to trust that it will happen at the right time is also really important.
Yeah, and I would add, absolutely acknowledging that there are, greater levels of trauma people overcoming, diagnoses and loss and griefs and so on. However, it may have been a slip in a race. However, the point is that lessons, and dare I say joyful lessons that are anchored in kindness and opportunity, so often show up in the tiniest things, and we can be so dismissive. Oh, it was just a slip. It was just this. It was just that. No, actually, it wasn't. It was a real moment that really happened, and it was, in truth, it's actually been. That was the little lock that you needed to get the key in, so to speak, and it's been really quite transformative for you. So
that's right. Oh, there's no doubt. I mean, I was captain of the team. I believed I was letting the country down and letting my family down. So there were big things that came with that. There's no doubt.
Yeah. So, thank you, Lisa. We could chat for another hour. So seriously, we so could, because there's so much we haven't spoken about. We haven't spoken about Rocky. We haven't.
Another time. I can read the book. It's a good story.
But honestly, it is. I really enjoyed, and it's such an easy book to read too. You literally glide through the read, so to speak. I remember when I first read it. When I first started reading. I was also reading Michelle Obama's Becoming at the same time. And do you remember what I said to you? Do you remember?
No.
So Michelle writes with such a beautiful metaphor. She's just got this beautiful metaphoric cadence through her writing. And there was a moment that she spoke about. And I'm trying to remember what it was. Something that's what she was describing. Writing, making toast, and it sounds like such a simple thing, right? But it was about, she was making toast, and it was the first time out of the White House, and they're in their own home, this White House. She's making her first meal when she is completely alone in the house. And as she's writing this, she started to talk about a memory that was just being pulled like a pebble from her pocket, that had slippedly, glid in and out of her person. And I was just like, oh. And it was such a beautiful link into like the way she spoke about that moment, about how it was a memory that sort of slipped in and out as it was gliding through her, her mainstream of life. And it was this simple, humble moment. And it connected me very quickly back to your reading, and the way you take so many simple, normal, daily, real life moments and weave them into a really strong lesson of learning for life. Because there's nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong with your thinking. Welcome to the
Oh, thank you. And I was fortunate. I have a beautiful editor, Ali Laveau, and she also edited Boycott. So she knew some of the stories very well. So she was really beautiful in helping me to do the weaving. Whereas my friend David Marr, he'd read earlier, said, no, at least he wanted to be sort of more sectionalized. And I wanted to be able to weave, because I was learning, I just wanted to be able to kind of weave what I was learning from this, from the Boycott, from the coaching course, and the conversation I had with, that mum who had the troubled teen, which sort of starts the book, and how that led me to the DY ladies. And so just try to weave that sort of stuff through. So it was a challenge because it did mean you jumped a little bit with some of the swimming stories, but Ali was fantastic at helping me do that.
Yeah, because I think that certainly the piece that really resonated with me in that weaving piece, it built that theory of relevance or relativity, in the sense that anybody can pick that up and see themselves in so many of those circumstances. And so, oh, that's just like the teenagers that come up and talk to you after you speak and say, hey, I get that. Yeah. I was going to give up on this, right? So the same type of, there's so many moments throughout Glide where people can look at that and go, oh, I can relate to that, you know. So and being relatable is half the battle, I think. So
for sure.
Okay, so now where can people get a copy of Glide? Do we have?
Well, I mean, of course, in these COVID-19 times, I would say support your local bookstore. If you've got a little local bookshop that is open, obviously the bigger ones are open. But yeah, otherwise you can. It's at Booktopia, of course. So yeah, anybody around the world can order it on Booktopia. So that's really nice as well. So yeah,
I'll drop a Booktopia link into our notes,
okay,
so that people can get their hands on a copy of Glide and get inspired and take the panic out of their living and find their own DY lady, their own DY lady inside.
Yeah. So, you know, I heard John Kabat-Zinn speaking recently to Dan Harris on the 10% Happier podcast, and he talked about the fact that you know, this is an all hands on deck time, and so like everybody, I've got to miss never enough. Do I know? As we've talked about, do I know enough about Buddhism, about mindfulness to write this book? Yeah. And so, you know, so I'm certainly no expert in any of this, but it's my hand. You know, it's my hand on deck. These are tough times. Hopefully, this can help.
Perfect. Lisa, thank you. It's been so cool to connect and, you know, get you talking about your story, your life, your world, your DY ladies, your inner DY lady even.
Exactly, she's there.
Just, by the way, just let me have our listeners know, did you save your marriage? Did you save your marriage?
Yes, I did save my marriage. Yes, I saved my marriage for 20 years on, and my teenage son is still talking about it. In fact, he's doing his HSC, and I don't want to say this too loud, but he's reading Glide. So yes, they're all good.
Also knew the answer to that question, just by the way, that I just wanted our people to know the answer to that question.
Thank you. Cyber hugs in these COVID-19 days.
Absolutely. Thank you.